Hey guys, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. It's February 27th, 2021, almost a full year into this pandemic. And I'm actually solo today, and I'll explain that in a moment, but it was unavoidable. So I'm going to actually bring it up in my monologue as to why. So I certainly do miss my partner today, but we're doing the right thing anyway. So our monologue this week is sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summer Hill, New York, and again, very loyal sponsor of the show, and we certainly do thank them and hope they're all well. So we'll jump right into the monologue, and the monologue this week is: sports seems to be opening back up, meaning here in New York, they allowed fans back in for Knicks games and Net games, which is kind of opening the door going forward for the Jets and the Giants. And again, we're only speaking on the New York side of things. And I just want to bring this up because I think we should err on the side of caution. The vaccines are being distributed, so a lot of people are getting them, which could be, contributing to the decline in current cases. But what I do want to mention and why we're not doing the show together, Steve and I, is because I tested positive for the coronavirus. And I have to say it's not a fun thing. It's a very debilitating. When it hits, it's difficult to be comfortable and so forth. But listen, over 500,000 people in this country have gotten the coronavirus and passed away. And to put that into a sports perspective, just look at the Big House in Michigan, right? It holds about 107,000. So take 5 Michigan Stadium arenas and look at that on an Ohio State-Michigan Saturday afternoon football game and look how many people there. It's just a sea of people. So picture 5 of those stadiums filled with people that have passed away from coronavirus. And it's a staggering amount. And I want to bring it up because, now that I have fallen, victim, and listen, I'm not going to die. I did have a rough couple of days, but I just want to be careful. And, let's not rush this thing because I wore a mask everywhere I went, and I didn't really go anywhere over the past year, and I still got it. So it's still out there. Let's not put our guards down and think that it's okay to go into sports and without practicing safe distancing and mask wearing and so forth. Because when you put in a Michigan Stadium scenario of how many people have passed away, I think we have to really, really be careful because this thing's not over. And, we're all anxious to get back to sports. We all want to be at sporting events, but I just don't know if it's the right time until more and more people get vaccinated because this virus is still out there and sports should be secondary. And again, we send our condolences out to the friends and family of the staggering amount of 500,000 Americans passed away. So I just wanted to bring that up this week on our monologue, and I certainly do wish Steve was here because I know he would have an opinion on this, but we're not together because he has children, and we have to be very, very careful. And if you want to go to sporting events, you have to be very, very careful. I think personally, I could wait. I don't find it necessary to have to go as much as I want to go until I find out that this virus is certainly on the downswing, which it is. But again, that could be contributed to the fact that vaccines are rolling out, and at some point in time, all Americans, or at least whoever chooses, will be vaccinated, and then we can get back to things that are more normal. So that's this week's monologue. And again, I'm here with you. I'm not here with Steve because of the reasons I laid out, but sports is going on, and we'll jump right into it. Obviously, the biggest topic, I guess, of the week, the sporting week, was Tiger Woods. And we all know what took place with Tiger Woods, a terrible car accident out in California. And luckily, he's still alive. But he has suffered some serious injuries. Now, to put into perspective, I mean, he was 45 years old. And he did win the Masters in 2019, I guess, or 2020, whatever it was. But it's going to make his comeback very difficult. But if anybody can do it, it's Tiger Woods. I'll give you that. And of course, it was seriously paralleled to Ben Hogan, who in 1949 suffered a major car accident too, and just ravaged his body from top to bottom. But he did come back and win some tournaments and so forth. But in this case, if Tiger Woods may be the fittest golfer I've ever seen, no question about it. But when your leg is broken in many places like that, it's going to make the comeback all that more difficult. But I really do believe if anybody can come back from this, it is Tiger Woods. But we're going to see. So we wish him a speedy recovery. And I was trying to think when we talk about sports, about people that get into accidents, like prominent figures, right? And you start with baseball, right? Immediately, being a Yankee fan, you come up with Thurman Munson, right? Who died in a plane crash in 1979. So these are things that impact that particular sport, and certainly the Tiger Woods has an impact across golf. But when you think about, other things in baseball, Roy Campanella had a terrible accident, and so it puts into perspective that, these sports athletes, they're just human beings, right? So they get it, and we just went through the Kobe Bryant situation a year ago, right? Although he was retired, he was still, the face of the NBA, and we lost him. So things are always out there that things could change significantly. And, when I think about the NBA and Kobe Bryant, going back quite a few years, there was, and a lot of our younger viewers may not know, but Drazen Petrovic. He was an up-and-coming, I think at the time, from Yugoslavia. I know he was a Croatian, but he passed away. One of the pure shooters and, the precursor to a lot of the Europeans that came into the NBA, and we lost him. And in hockey, we lost Pelle Lindbergh, was a goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers in a car accident. So these things, they happen. And, we shouldn't be all that surprised because these are just people. But in sports, like I said, they're just people, and these things are going to happen. But we wish Tiger Woods all the best. And we really do. And it's, again, when these things happen, we shouldn't be surprised because these are just people, even though they're sporting athletes and so forth. So good luck to him. And we do wish him all the best. And we're going to move on. So let's stick with the NHL because there was a very intriguing story going on this past week with the New York Rangers. And Steve and I, we're Ranger fans, and we've talked about, the Rangers up and coming, and one of the key figures to make the resurgence of the New York Rangers was Artemi Panarin. And a strange situation. He's a Russian, but he's been accused of doing something because of his potentially support of Navalny, who was jailed by Vladimir Putin. So there seems to be quite a coincidence that, him speaking out and then having to take a leave of absence because he was accused of doing something which nobody's been able to validate. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it's just a strange story. One of the best players in the NHL, and it just hasn't been corroborated by anybody in the sporting world that knows this guy. So it's gotten to that Vladimir Putin could actually impact somebody speaking out, and we know the guy. He's as close to a dictator, I guess, as you could have in politics today. But it's a strange thing, and again, I don't know all of the behind-the-scenes facts, but I do not believe that this was something that was factual in nature. But we don't know. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But he's taken a leave of absence from the Rangers, and we're going to see how this pans out, because he is a pivotal force for the Rangers to be successful on this comeback trail. And Steve and I have talked about it, and Steve seems to think that David Quinn is getting close to the point where he's got to start turning this thing around, and losing Panarin was a big loss. And as you know, we can see in hockey, they change coaches a lot. Claude Julien, he won a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins and went back with his second stint for the Montreal Canadiens, and he got fired, along with Kirk Muller. So, again, this is now the second season since the start of the pandemic and so forth, and I'm looking forward to a great hockey season. But there's just some strange happenings going on. But one other note from the hockey world, and we've talked about this, I'm a big fan, and a lot of people don't like him because he is a whiner, but Sid the Kid, Crosby played in his 1,000th game. That's a big deal. Just a great, future Hall of Famer and so forth. So, and we also mentioned, the new breed, believe it or not. Sidney Crosby's been around for that long. But guys like Connor McDavid, who Steve and I both agree that he's the face of hockey. He's that talented. And he reached 500 points, just as, the top six. Obviously nobody, again, can touch Wayne Gretzky and Lemieux in that. But he scored a lot of points in a short period of time. So, we're going to fast forward 10 years and, We talked about the possibility of Ovechkin actually breaking the all-time goal-scoring record. I think the pandemic set him back a little bit. But we could be talking about McDavid in 10 years from now. Is it a remote possibility he could possibly approach Wayne Gretzky's numbers? Well, if he stays healthy, it's quite possible, right? But hockey is... It's one of our favorites. We love it, and it doesn't get a lot of attention until the NFL and the Super Bowl is over, but that's over, and hockey is underway. And if we move on real quick to the NBA, and just as we kind of talked about all year, once James Harden held the Houston Rockets hostage, forced them to trade him to the Brooklyn Nets, where he wanted to go, because it's going to be his only chance to win an NBA championship. The Brooklyn Nets look formidable, and I've said it all along. It's going to be the Brooklyn Nets versus the Lakers in the finals. That's what Adam Silver wants, and that's what Adam Silver's going to get. Although, keep in mind, this is, a minor hamstring tweak for Kevin Durant, and he's missed 6-7 games. Not that it's mattered because the Nets are loaded. They got a great team. I think they easily the Eastern Conference representative in the finals, and I think that's going to happen. But that's starting to heat up. I do disagree with Adam Silver's decision to move ahead with an all-star game. And again, we can link this back to our monologue. Is it really, really necessary to put these guys on display, even though they had a short off season and so forth? But it is all about, and Steve would say, yes, it's all about the money. But the players aren't happy about it, but it's moving forward. So there's going to be an NBA All-Star game. And I just don't think it's a great idea. I think that's something, these guys could use the time off. But this is a decision made from the commissioner's office, and they're going to move ahead with it. One other item that I wanted to bring up, because it's a topic, and I think it's going to happen, is changing the logo of the NBA. Right now, the current logo, as we know, was modeled on the great Jerry West. And there's a big push to change that to Kobe Bryant as the new logo for the NBA. And, I don't know what people's feelings are. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So send us an email at sportswithmono@gmail.com, because it's a very interesting topic. And unfortunately, the passing of Kobe Bryant has kind of pushed this movement. I don't think there was a movement before he passed away. Is it a right way to honor somebody like that? Possibly. But if you really want to put it into perspective and you want a logo for the NBA and you were going to replace Jerry West, I don't know how it could not be Michael Jordan, right? I think he's clearly the greatest basketball player of all time. I don't have a problem if they go ahead and do it for Kobe Bryant. But I don't know that Kobe Bryant was a better basketball player than Michael Jordan. And at the time, someone could say, I don't know if Jerry West was the best basketball player of his time. But it's a push that's serious, and it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen to honor Kobe Bryant. But I said, if you had to put a list together of who would be the guy you want to be the face of the NBA, I still think it's got to be Michael Jordan. I don't know how it could be anybody else. So, folks, also, as it starts to get warmer on the East Coast, we know what that means. It means it's spring training. Major League Baseball is starting to get underway. Pitches and catches are in. Exhibition games and spring training games are going to start actually this weekend. How about that? And I'm looking forward to a full season, because it still kind of irks me a little bit that it was only a 60-game season last year, and I don't want to diminish the Los Angeles Dodgers, because it was a 60-game season and they won the championship, but it's not what it should have been. Baseball is an endurance, 162-game season, and I think we're back to that, and it's exciting to see. So something interesting in Major League Baseball, and sometimes you scratch your head and you wonder, what are these people thinking, right? Kevin Mather was the president of the Seattle Mariners, just made some horrific statements about the players that are on his own team, disparaging in a sense about their ability to speak English and the amount of money they're making, and calling them overpaid. I mean, you wonder, how does Kevin Mather get into a position? If this was his feelings all along, how did he last so long? And how did he get to the point where he was the president of a Major League Baseball team if he had these horrible feelings about the people that are under his employ. And rightfully so. Once it came out and they found, tape from the interviews that he gave, he was forced to step down. But it just makes you wonder, how do these people get into this position if these were their feelings all along? It's amazing to me. It really is amazing to me. But as we know, the culture today, there's no room for those kind of things. So it's happening. And Kevin Mather's not going to be the last guy to put his foot in his mouth and cost himself a career. We saw it with the Mets recently, and a couple of their guys, they have an ugly track record, and I don't know why it was hidden all this time, but it just really makes you wonder about the people in charge sometimes of these sports. But, we won't hear from Kevin Mather again because, once you cross that line, you've crossed it for good and you can't get back. So that's just something that happened in Major League Baseball, and it takes the news off the field, right? Which is what baseball is all about. We talked last week about Tatis getting that big contract and so forth, but when you look at Major League Baseball as a whole, it's exciting to have baseball back. And being a Yankees fan, and again, we're impartial, of course, but Brett Gardner was brought back, so he's a utility guy. Now, I looked overall at Brett Gardner's numbers, and I think both my father and Steve alike, both were big fans of Brett Gardner. He was a guy that it was a good leadoff hitter, and he had a lot of speed and so forth, but this will be his 14th year with the Yankees. They brought him back at a bargain basement price of $5 million. We laugh about a bargain basement price, but that's what they're going to pay him. But his overall numbers, not great, but I guess certain players bring certain things, the intangibles, if you will, to them. And I think the Yankees have a great lineup, but they've had a great lineup for the past few years, but they haven't won a World's Championship since 2009. This isn't exactly the missing piece, but he is a Yankee. He'll start his career and end his career as a Yankee, and that's rare in sports today. But he's back with the Yankees. And one other player, and I was a little surprised because I actually thought that Miguel Cabrera already had 3,000 hits, but he's looking to become the 6th player in baseball history to have 500 home runs and 3,000 hits. Now, when you think about the players that are there, the Willie Mays, the Hank Aarons, and so forth, you don't necessarily put Miguel Cabrera in that category, but his numbers are indicative. I guess Albert Pujols is currently there too, but he's been a good guy. He did win a Triple Crown. He's been a quiet player, so. I don't have any problem with guys like that, ending up. But like again, when you put it into perspective, you're not going to put Miguel Cabrera in the same sentence as Hank Aaron and so forth from that numbers perspective. But he is there. I do wish him the best. He's been a good player, and let's say he's few home runs away from 500 and 130 some odd hits away from 3,000. So we wish him the best. And baseball is underway. Looking forward to it. So our next segment is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut. And again, they've been with our show since the inception. And we do thank them and hope them and their families are well up in Connecticut. So much talk going on in Major League Baseball. in the NFL regarding this quarterback situation. This The latest was Russell Wilson. Now, there seems to be a lot of contention in Seattle with Russell Wilson. And you say, wait a minute, but Russell Wilson just signed, this huge contract back in 2018. And, how does things fall apart? Did Russell Wilson walk into Seattle's front office and say, I want to be traded for whatever reason? And again, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, but the Deshaun Watson thing, and these guys are just being able to go in, James Harden, whatever it is, and say, I know you're paying me $40 million a year, but I want to play somewhere else. And I just don't think it's right. And a lot of people disagree. They think that the player should be able to take his wares to any team that he wants. And I said, well, in a sense, I guess that's true if you didn't sign this contract. Now, the Deshaun Watson situation is a big deal because he just signed this contract extension. They are literally paying him $40 million a year. Now, Dak Prescott in Dallas, that's a different story. Dak Prescott is not under contract. They will franchise tag him, and okay, so he's only going to make $38 million this year, which is alone a staggering figure. But basically, he's a free agent. So I don't, he has the ability. He's not under contract, and he didn't walk into Dallas front office and tell Jerry Jones that I want to be traded. He's been very classy about it. He's been very quiet about it. But he has the ability to say whether or not he wants to stay in Dallas or not, because he hasn't signed a contract. When you get to guys like Russell Wilson and you get to guys like Deshaun Watson, if you sign that contract, you are under the employ of that particular team, and you waived all rights to say, I want to go somewhere else. But we look back and say, did this James Harden thing set a precedent for sports in general? Well, it certainly seems like it has a little bit in football. And, when we talk about quarterbacks, there's still a situation with Drew Brees and whether he's going to come back and whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers want to pay Ben Roethlisberger. They're staring at a $40 million cap hit to keep him. But he didn't walk in and demand a trade. He's willing to say, I'll work with you guys. And either defer the money or to minimize it. But, I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers and Art Rooney II came out and said, we want Ben Roethlisberger back, so they'll work out a deal. So there is a fundamental difference between these guys that are on the fence about whether they're going to come back or not. But once you're under a contract, if you sign that like Deshaun Watson less than a year ago, I think you lost all your leverage. And I hope it doesn't set a precedent in sports where you could just walk in and say, I want to be traded, even though we've been paying you. And we've talked about it over and over and over again. But a lot of decisions to be made. And a lot of this is going to impact the way the NFL draft is going to go down. Probably going to be a virtual draft, which I think is a good idea. I think they pulled it off last year. But there's a lot of quarterbacks that are out there, the Trey Lances and the Zach Wilsons. So we know in the NFL, certain teams like the Patriots, they need a quarterback. Hear a lot of, and Steve and I, we like Mel Kiper Jr. a lot, but, is Trey Lance the quarterback that Bill Belichick covets? I don't know. Big decisions for the Jets. Do they stick with Sam Darnold? Do they go for another quarterback? A lot of discussion on that front. So the NFL draft, again, this is going to be the first time in, I guess, probably since the 83 draft when we had the Elways and the Marinos and all those future Hall of Famers. a lot of talent on the quarterback front. So, you know, when you look at guys like a lot of discussion that the Patriots were interested in Marcus Mariota. Come on, really? No. The guy's been around. He's proven he's a mediocre quarterback at best. But are they going to pay him that kind of money, or do they just sit and wait and get their quarterback of the future in the draft? Again, I do like Zach Wilson. Saw an interview with the BYU coach Sataki, who is a lot of questions are out there about the leadership skills of Zach Wilson, and of course his coach is going to stand up for him. But he said the players on our BYU football team, he came in, he was a freshman, wasn't really even on the board, and ended up becoming a great quarterback for BYU. And his coach said the guy is a leader. So I think if the Jets, with the second pick in the draft, I think that's a logical choice for them, unless they feel Sam Darnold, and Steve's a bigger Sam fan than I am, but a lot of quarterback talent coming out. The Justin Fields, I don't think he's going to be that type of franchise quarterback, but he could be. But when you look at the aspects of Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, but you know what? Trey Lance, as athletic as he is, if you look at his numbers, not great. Not great. And he did play for a Division II North Dakota State team, too. So there's a lot of risk and a lot of things worked out for the Chargers, though, right? They got Justin Herbert, who we always thought was going to be a really good player, and he looks like he's on his way to a great future. So you never know. The draft is just that. It's you take your pick, you roll the dice, and see where it takes you. So we're going to find out about that for sure. But that's coming up back in that's April. I think it's going to be a virtual event again, but I don't have any problem with that at all. And I think I saw ESPN is going to host. I think they had Trey Wingo host it last year. I think they're going to host Mike Greenberg, who's well respected across the sports world. When both Steve and I like Greeny, and I think he should do a great job at the draft. So let's move on real quick. And again, we're getting close to the end of the college basketball season. And we talked a little bit about it. It's been an unusual year, and we can attribute that to the pandemic and so forth. But when you have teams like Duke, Michigan State, Kentucky, they're not running away with it. You have the new teams like Baylor and Gonzaga. These guys, they're going to be. And listen, Baylor's had a lot of games postponed and so forth because of the pandemic. But March Madness is right around the corner, and Duke and Michigan State and these kind of teams are, as we use the term, on the bubble. And it's definitely going to be a different March Madness, right? We didn't have March Madness at all last year. And this one's going to be, they're going with the city, I guess, of Indianapolis or the state of Indiana to play these games. And again, they're rolling the dice. This isn't a for sure thing that this pandemic is over, but March Madness is upon us, and we're really looking forward to seeing college basketball because it's always one of the great times of the year. But it's certainly been different, and we're going to find out who's going to get in, who's not going to get in. And hopefully it'll be a safe and healthy March Madness because we always just love it. We love it. So we'll speak more about that coming up and with our picks once the brackets are all set and so forth. But college basketball is a great thing that just we wait all year for. We've missed that. So from a pandemic perspective, that's been one of the sporting events that's been sorely missed, certainly by the Sports with Mono and Mono crew. That's for sure. And we'll get into more of the college football, but there was just another note, and to say the rich get richer sort of thing. This kid Ty Simpson, four-star recruit, ends up signing with Alabama. So again, we've talked about it before with Nick Saban and his ability to recruit the best players, but this kid Simpson has just decided he's going to Alabama. So looks like the quarterback tradition of Alabama football will continue. And from a golf perspective, we're rapidly approaching, right? We'll be in March next week, which means the Masters, one of our favorite sporting events of all time, is happening. And I know the golf world was shocked, but the Tiger Woods, so he's not going to be a figure to contend with, so that takes that story off the table. But a lot of the hype surrounding the Masters, it's right, and looking forward to seeing it. And this week, you have the young guns, and again, calling them young guns, but the Brooks Koepkas and Justin Thomases, these guys are all playing. So, these young guys that haven't won at Augusta have as great a chance as ever. And we certainly can't wait until the Masters. And it's going to be, the azaleas will be in bloom. So it's not going to be a delayed Masters like it was last year. And we can't wait. So, but these guys right now, young guns, Daniel Berger, won a couple weeks ago, and you can't deny the presence of some of these golfers. It's wide open, and looking forward to it. And looking forward to the scenic beauty of the Masters at Augusta, and it's certainly going to be interesting because it's going to be different than it was last year. Even though it still was the Masters, it didn't have that lure of being the first weekend in April. So looking forward to that. So again, folks, thanks for joining us. But I wanted to bring out some notable passing, and it kind of went under the radar. I actually missed it. It was brought up by one of our listeners, Jim Walsh. He was a pitcher for the Dodgers, and he wasn't as well known as Sandy Koufax. He wasn't as well known as Don Drysdale. But in 1962, he was second in Major League Baseball in strikeouts, sandwiched between Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale. So Stan Williams, most baseball players, baseball fans would certainly know who Stan Williams is. We remember him as a pitching coach for many, many different teams, but had a very good career. He was a good ball player, and he was a pitcher for the Dodgers and so forth. Played for a couple of the teams, but he had a great run with a couple of great Hall of Famers in Drysdale and Koufax. So we wanted to give a shout out to Stan Williams, who passed away last week. So again, everybody, we'd love to hear from you. And again, my apologies that both Steve and I weren't able to be with you today, but it was out of an abundance of caution. We don't want to contribute, right? We want to do the right thing for our friends and family. And if you get bit by this bug, you got to do the right thing. You got to quarantine, keep your mask on. And that's what we had to do this week. But hopefully this will subside. We'll all feel better. Hopefully I feel better, because it is a terrible, terrible thing to go through. But Steve and I should be back with you next week for the next edition of Sports with Mono and Mono. And of course, we always want you to send us an email and give us your thoughts on anything. Give us your Tiger Woods thoughts. Let us know what you think about the events of the sporting world, and send us an email at sportswithmonoandmono@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, and certainly we'll bring it up if you point out something that we missed, we'll be happy to bring it up for you on the next week's show. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Again, stay healthy out there. We're rounding the curve, as they say, but we're not completely out of the woods yet. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks. Bye.